Testing, testing. Hello? Hello, hello? Meow, meow. Let me check. Can't hear anything from my phone. Alright, testing. Puppies, kitties, baby dogs. Okay, my internet's very, very slow. Okay. Hi, dear Kathy Don. Alright, so it's working. And I just posted the link in chat. My fan is kind of loud. Let me... Okay. Welcome. Alright, so of course, I brought Amicus with me. So he'll be here with us. And then let me say hi to Amicus. Alright, so let me switch to the desktop view. Alright. So today, this is probably it might be my favorite topic for this course, is what do you want from art? And present it. Alright. So last week I ended with this question. Pretty much that's what all this is going to be about, and it's going to get into more. I don't know if I'm going to finish this lecture. If you're in my class, I haven't posted the assignment because I don't know if I'm going to get through all of this. So, yeah. Alright, so the basis of this lecture is you will only get out of art what you put into it. Meaning if you're lazy, then you're not going to get much out of art. Okay, so now that you're taking this class, you are forever responsible for putting effort into thinking and talking about art. You are not allowed to dismiss an artwork right away. You are not allowed to like a piece and not understand why. It is illegal and you will go to jail, and everybody will cry because you didn't do your job as an art appreciator. It's not technically illegal. That's just a joke. But yeah, if you part of this class is learning to see art in a different light, I guess, more educated light, not just take art for granted as much. I mean, it's true that some of you are taking this class just because you have to, but hopefully you'll take some things away from it other than just a grade. Alright, so again, all of these artworks don't have much to do with the text or the idea. It's just something to look at. Alright, so think about why you like or dislike an artwork. So the first thing people notice is what it looks like. The meaning is usually comes later. So now that we know the elements and principles, apply it to the artwork to understand why you like it. Do you like the repetition? Do you like the colors? Do you like the lines, the forms. What is it about it that you like? Now that you're able to put these things into words, think about why you like or dislike something. Okay, so if you don't like the color yellow, maybe you understand, okay, I don't like yellow, or maybe you don't like repetition or patterns. Um, Maybe you don't like how things are scaled differently. I don't know. Does it look like it took a lot of work? A lot of people do tend to value skilled labor as far as art is concerned. Is that why you like or dislike something? Because it has or doesn't have it? Think about that as an important part of the process. Does that matter to you if it's something's rendered realistically or not? Does the subject matter fascinate you? This is obvious. If you're not into horses, you probably won't like horse paintings, and that might be a deterrent. But at the same time, maybe think about why that is. Why do you not like horses? I mean, who doesn't like horses? They're so beautiful. I got to pet my first horse 2 years ago, and it was so awesome. Anyways, again, when it comes to the work in it, does it look like it took minimal effort? If you don't like that, maybe think about why that is. What is the purpose of having an artwork that doesn't have realistic rendering, or something that doesn't look like it took a lot of time? Maybe the idea is the most important part of it. And think about that. And if that's the case, try to think about why the painting needs to be like this, and would it be better or would it be worse if the painting or whatever was like this? Or, sorry, would it be better or worse if the painting had more detail? And I say painting as just the prime example of what people think of when it comes to art. Okay, does it look stupid and pointless? Again, maybe read about the details behind the artwork. Do a little bit of research. If you're in the gallery, there's usually some information about the artwork. And read it and see if that changes your perception about it. If you're not in a gallery, do 5 minutes of research. 2 minutes of research can even tell you a lot that might reveal a lot behind a piece of art. Okay, so this last point's pretty important too. Do you hate that it's famous and costs so much money? Maybe that's the reason why someone can like or dislike an artwork. So if that's the case, think about as if it was $5. How would that change your perception? Or what if it was given as a gift to you? How would that change your perception of an artwork? Yeah, I find that's a lot of. We're gonna talk more about this later, but yeah, I feel like that's a huge part of why people might not like an artwork, because it costs so much money and it's so famous. So this was happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. So this Eric Carle illustration here was posted for Mother's Day, and it's really cute. I love Eric Carle's illustrations. Shout out to my mom for being a mother and also for showing me Eric Carle. All right, so artwork that you like. So it's easier to like something that you like, to appreciate it, but why stop there? Again, just because you like something, it's pretty good to explore why you like it. It takes more work to understand why you don't like something, but put in some effort to things that you do like. So the examples I have here is tell someone who hasn't taken this class, someone who's not an artist, what about it that you like. Explain it to them. So for me, the best way to learn something to its fullest extent is to teach it, which is what I'm doing right now. And I had to learn a lot of stuff that I knew as an artist. I had to relearn it in order to teach it to y'all. Otherwise, I wouldn't really understand the reasons why I'm teaching this. Okay. And the reason I'm teaching what I'm teaching, again, this comes back to the lecture last week, is because I have my preferences, but I had to learn why I have these preferences and what I like about them, and also how that will affect you. Okay. Again, do research on the piece. Maybe you'll find a deeper appreciation for it, or maybe it might milkshake duck the artist. Milkshake duck refers to basically a meme where someone does something awesome and then you find out later that they're racist or and a horrible person or something like that. Maybe you won't like it as much. But I think that could be pretty important. And we're going to talk about art versus artists next week, or for our next topic. Write about how it makes you feel. That's a really good exercise to, especially when you physically write something down, as opposed to typing. Typing helps, but physically writing something down really activates something in your brain. You have to do more work to write down the individual letters and words. That's, in my opinion, the best way to articulate why you like something. Or just give it a kiss. I like to, kiss plushies. I like to kiss artworks if I can. I have gotten in trouble for kissing a painting at a gallery once. I don't know. I think kissing's great. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go on to the concept of modern art. So I find that most people rarely ever have a problem with beautiful classical, neoclassical art from like the Renaissance or whatever that's realistically rendered. And a lot of people tend to find most issue with modern art when it comes to art. And the term modern art is not exact. When people say modern art, they usually refer to contemporary art, but for the sake of this class and for the sake of the layman, we'll just call it all modern art, which is basically a lot of art that's made today, but most specifically like weird, not necessarily realistic art. That's what a lot of people consider to be called modern art. Okay, so we're not going to watch any of the videos that we have here, otherwise this lecture would run way too long. So I forgot this. Okay, this is Morley Safer. This is some old dead white guy. So the summary of this video, which I have right here, is Mickey Rooney. So he basically talks about pieces of art that he doesn't like, that he finds ugly or weird. He lumps them all together and calls them all modern art, and then calls it pretentious. And this video really sucks. That's in the next slide. Okay. And then this video, this is Morley Safer. So this video is a lot more better. It's a lot more better. It's better because he puts in more effort into it. So he actually talks to some of the artists, or a couple of the artists. He asks for differing opinions from contemporary artists as well as classical artists or classical art historians. However, when it comes to the art that he's talking about, it's definitely on the more extreme art side, which I'll talk about more. And there's a part about the auctions here that he's not wrong about. But there's at least two boomers in this chat, which is my mom and my dear Kathy. Okay, boomer refers to basically people of my generation and younger, just not taking shit from older people who don't get the kind of art or culture that we have. Like, we're not going to explain it to you. Just open your mind. Okay. So why these videos suck? Okay, so a big issue is, this first point is, they make blatant statements about what modern art is. Again, modern art isn't really much of a term that art historians use. It's basically a term that lay people use that to talk about artworks that exist within the past 100 or so years, that are they're usually like, again, weird or abstract or whatever, and they also use the most extreme examples, I think. Okay, yeah, they use extreme examples, so I have more on that later. So the second point here is they're not acting in good faith, meaning that morally safer is a little bit better, but they're not actually trying to put a lot of effort into understanding them. They're making kind of quick and lazy judgments about things. And I'll 2 points later, I'll explain why that's a problem. They have very specific views of what art should be, and they're mistaking that for art that they value. And of course, it's okay to not like abstract artwork or whatever, but they talk about how it's not good artwork, as opposed to artwork that they just don't like, which is a huge difference. Because some of you, I think this is a great artwork. It's a nice example of cartooning with shading. It's fun. It's cute. It's a sketch. It's not supposed to be like a super important $1 million painting. It's something that was posted on Twitter. Some of you might not like it, and that's fine. Is it good art? Is it bad art? There's no such thing. Okay, so the difference between these videos and like someone on the street talking to their friend about it, the problem is these men were broadcast on public TV channels, 60 Minutes or CBS, whatever. And the problem with that is a lot of people respect them and see them as authority, and they're basically propagating these lazy judgments against art. And most of them, and they're mostly just complaining about stuff that they don't like, which sucks. Like, I feel it's pretty bad to just bring things down without trying to understand them. And I'm bringing these men down because they have a responsibility to offer an educated opinion, and they're not doing that. They're, again, propagating harmful information that will influence people on how to think. Because, again, people respect these older, straight, white, cis males, because they're in charge or whatever. So, yeah, they're extremely harmful. And that's why it applies the same thing to media, like celebrities. If celebrities say something bad about people, like, that's very harmful. Especially with the author of Harry Potter, which I will not speak her name, speaking her transphobic views. That's extremely harmful because people look up to her and her hateful views, which are very bigoted against transphobic people. And she has a platform that she could use for good, but instead she's using it for hate. So it's super harmful, especially the people who follow Harry Potter who don't have any trans friends. She has a responsibility to share love and compassion, but instead she's spewing hate. So people with a public position have a more effective opinion than I do, for example. But then again, I have a more effective opinion, meaning it affects people, than you, my students, because I'm in this power or position of power where I get to teach these things. And I'm telling you, these videos suck because they don't put in work, right? There's plenty of great examples, which I'll point to later, of great videos that show good work. But I want to point out to you that just because someone's in a position of power, that doesn't mean they're good videos. It just means they have a bigger platform to share. Okay, lessons to take from these videos. So, blanket statements and judgments are super unhelpful. Just painting something like a vast group of work that's completely unrelated as one thing, modern art, is extremely harmful because it takes away a lot of nuance. Because there's a lot of modern art that these old men would consider beautiful, but they ignore those. Even though they would fit perfectly into what they would say. But then again, they're talking about modern art as basically things they don't like that was made in the last 100 or so years. So yeah, kind of weird to do that. So what to do instead? Instead of using blanket statements and judgments, look at artworks individually, even things within... Oh gosh, I have this word here. Even artworks with it will have variations. Even the artist will have variations within their oeuvre. That's a that's a French word saying that means all the artworks within an artist's own collection or whatever. Everything that an artist makes. Pardon me. I don't know why we're taught this word oeuvre. It's kind of silly. Why can't we just say their body of work? Whatever. But yeah, it's important to take each artwork individually. But at the same time, we do have to take into account we have limited energy and time, so we can't speak about every single individual artwork, obviously. But just painting things as one thing is very hurtful. Like saying all video games suck is extremely harmful. We're going to talk about video games and their nuances a lot later, or in a couple weeks. So yeah, it's super harmful to do that. Don't do that. Consider many works, not just extreme examples. So again, these men basically, we're looking at examples that were the weirdest or the most, what's the word? Like obscure or arcane. There's another word for it that I can't think of. But yeah, like the cows that were painted in the, not Morley Safer, the really old dead guy, his video, those were fine, but most of them are like really, really abstract or really conceptual that maybe an artist had other people commissioned to do. So that's very harmful because, again, it shows things that aren't necessarily good examples. They might just be the weirdest things. So maybe when you're talking about modern art, think about things that are more of the average or that aren't so out there. Okay, and if you are gonna talk about something that's out there, make sure you say that these things aren't an example of everything that's being made today. Okay. Be open to new ideas. Oh my gosh. So this is the biggest one for me. And if there's anything you take away from this class, it's this whole lecture of you'll only get out of art what you put into it. But basically, be open to new ideas. This is a huge pet peeve of mine when people are just so close-minded about things where they don't allow themselves to be wrong or don't allow themselves to open themselves up to new ideas. One of the best examples of this was this older teacher of mine named John, who passed away a couple years ago. He was teaching a glass casting class, which was very like skill intensive or whatever. And I mentioned to him, hey, you should come to this show that I curated. It's about, it'll open your mind up about what a doorstop can be, and it was a funny, weird exhibition about doorstops and doors and stuff, like weird stuff like that. And what he said back to me was, my mind is as open as it possibly could be, which is if you think about it, that makes zero sense. That's super contradictory. Because he's saying like he's talked like I did things in this class that really pushed his buttons. Like I brought in really weird stuff, and for him to say like his mind is as open as it possibly can be was obviously incorrect. So that's I feel that that's more of not being able to admit that there are things that you don't know, and you know what? It's okay, and it's great that there's things that you don't know because you can learn new things, right? So this is just more of a symptom of people unable to learn more than they think they should, which is very, very dangerous because that's leading to a lot of bad habits, to climate catastrophe and stuff like that. Don't be old man yelling at cloud. That's a Simpsons reference. Like, don't complain about things just because you don't understand them because you're set in your ways. And this is definitely true about older people. And I'm definitely going to say this definitely applies to millennials, my age group, when they talk about the 90s being the best time. I cannot stand that. It sucks. You're like millennials saying that are old, and they're officially on the decline. So yeah, be open to new ideas because the worldview that you have, that's not all that exists. And being closed off to new experiences and new things is just super harmful. And it creates hate and tension with others. And I think, and it's okay to disagree, but be open to new interpretations and be open to the fact that people can see things differently and it's just as valid. Okay. So do a little bit more work and don't be so lazy and quick with your judgments. Okay. But sometimes you can't do that all the time. So yeah, maybe you don't want, like I personally don't want to understand Fortnite, for example, because a lot of it's about shooting other people and it's multiplayer. I play games to not have to deal with people. It's just like an experience that I can live in my own head. I don't want to be a part of Fortnite because, it's just not my thing. I appreciate that people have used it to make money, to make lifelong friends, to connect with people, to socialize during quarantine. I think Fortnite can be a super great platform, but it's just not my thing. I prefer other types of games that are more solitary. That's just my example. Okay. But when it comes to that, unless it's like you're bringing in some sort of thoughtful discourse to it, there's no real point of complaining about something just because, again, unless it's constructive. So if you don't like something, don't tell everyone about it. You're just bringing more negativity into the world, and that, frankly, doesn't really help people out. If it's something that makes someone happy and you don't like it, shut up. Just let them enjoy it or support them. Yeah, the internet needs to take a lesson. Like, just shut up sometimes. All right, so let's talk a little bit more specific types of misunderstood art. So abstraction. All right, so abstraction is a very broad concept. There's a difference between non-representational and abstraction. Okay, so here's the spectrum of abstraction, which I'll go through, kind of reading the slide more or less. So naturalistic is painting. I'm using I'll just say art in general. So naturalistic is trying to make something as realistic as possible to represent the real world as perfectly as you possibly can, which takes a lot of skill and a lot of effort to replicate what you see because the world is super detailed. Stylized, that's going more abstract, whereas things aren't exactly naturalistic. Maybe the shadows or perspective aren't correct. It still gets across items in real life, like cows, houses, for example. you still understand that those are those objects that are represented, that exist in real life, but it looks a little bit different. Idealize is how humans sort of idealize things, basically trying to make them as perfect as possible. It's humans thinking about what is the perfect form of something. So this is a Greek statue of a man. I have a terrible memory. I used to know who this was, but it's an idealized statue of what a perfect male looks like, which I disagree. But that's the sculptor's opinion. So that's very subjective. Okay, so abstracted. So obviously, cows are not yellow, and so making a cow a different color abstracts it further. It brings it further away from what reality is into something more artistic and more expressive. Okay, so this is also supposed to be a cow, not representational. It's the same artist, Franz Marc, I believe, and yeah, he just broke down the components of this painting more or less into squares, and when you go from this to this, yeah, it's a bit of a leap, but you can see that there's similar elements in this composition from here to here, right? So now, like, when you look at this painting after knowing it's this painting broken down like this, okay, now I can sort of see a cow. And then here's completely non-representational. Representational, again, meaning an object or something in a painting that represents something in real life. So this cow is representational of an actual cow that we can see with our own eyes. Okay, and non-representational just means completely abstract. There's no reference to the real world here. It's just paint on a canvas, painted in a certain way without trying to represent the real world. Okay, so in regards to abstractions, most people talk about non-representational work. So when people talk about abstract artwork, this is abstracted artwork. This is abstracted artwork. Even this can be considered abstracted, but most people are talking about this completely non-representational work. So this is, it might seem a little like pedantic, meaning might seem a little like super technical, know-it-all kind of information, but that's kind of what this class is about, just telling you more specific examples of, or being more specific about words and how we use them. Okay, so when people hate abstraction, it's because they value artwork that looks like it was painted from real life. That takes a lot of skill in representing light, shadows, forms, or whatever. A lot of people see this as just kind of nonsense, sloppy. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know how to feel about it. It's weird. There's nothing going on. It's just paint randomly put onto a canvas, right? Which is obviously a problem. So yeah, that's again not like this bottom point says. You're not putting effort into it at all. You're just thinking about why you don't like it instead of thinking why you think it might be good or why people might think it's good. So what's potentially good about it? It just looks cool. I think this painting's really amazing. I don't think there's any representational elements in it. It's a digital painting, by the way. Yeah, sometimes I think this looks awesome. I love the colors, how they interplay with each other. It's super bright and vibrant. I like the white space because it gives your eye a little bit of space to rest. So the second point's pretty fun. Just like looking at clouds in the sky and pointing out what kind of shapes they might represent. Yeah, like you could turn this into something. Like maybe this is like the ocean and some animals in it. or something. Like, you could turn it into your own little narrative of what it could be. You could make a little game out of it, of what it could represent. Or maybe it's an expression of emotions that maybe you have an abstract way of connecting with it. I don't know. Elements and principles are represented well. That was the first point, basically. The fourth point, the way it can make someone feel that's impossible to describe. So this is like, music's a similar thing where some people, the only way they know how to express themselves is through music or through dance, for example. Dance is a really good example because you're moving your body in really weird, unnatural ways, and sometimes that's the best way you can express it. Like, for example, when you win something or whatever, get a job that you really wanted, like, you jump up and down and dance all over the place. Like, that doesn't have any meaning in itself. That's just like a weird way of expressing yourself, right? And sometimes abstract painting or abstract artwork in general is the way some people express themselves best, you know? Yeah, and that doesn't always have to include people in the picture expressing their emotions. I forgot. Oh, there's this movie on Netflix, which is very weird and surreal, called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And the main character, like, at one point, like, she's a painter, and her boyfriend's dad or whatever says, like, there's a landscape there, but there's no one in the painting to tell me how I should feel about this. You know, and it's just like, well, you can interpret it on your own. And then sometimes there's a physiological component to it where maybe you react strongly to the color yellow, and if there's a lot of yellow in the painting, like, that might have neurological effects on you that you can't control. So Ad Reinhardt was part of the abstract expressionist painting movement. I keep on looking at my phone to check the time, and I don't know if we're going to get through all of this, but it's important to talk about, in my opinion. So this is a mostly blue painting, and it's just a blue painting, and anyone who likes this is like a pretentious hipster, and it's crap, and it's stupid, and I could do this. So why, what the hell's up with this? So I probably am a pretentious hipster, because honestly, like, I'm an artist and I've studied art. So there's a lot of stuff. When people call me a hipster, it's probably because I find value in things that take a lot of work to find value in. Like, I listen to a lot of ambient music, for example, and I know people have called me pretentious because I like ambient music, but sometimes, like, I really love subtle things where it just makes sense to me. Like, it just feels good. It feels like I'm being tickled in my brain. Okay, so why do I like this painting? Like, I do really, really, really like this painting a lot. So there's a few reasons. Blue is my favorite color. I love blue. That might sound weird to you, dear Kathy, since, like, St. Patrick's green. I was born in March, and people associate me with St. Patrick's Day. I was born on the 15th. So people think I like green because of that, but I actually like blue the best. I mean, blue is my power color, pretty much. So I like having a big blue painting in my room would be awesome. My walls are white, but I'm fine with that. But if I were to have a house, it would probably be a cerulean blue. I think it's beautiful. The second point, I'm very, very sensitive. So I'm very attuned to differences in change. And I like more quiet, subtle things, again, because I'm an extremely sensitive person. Like, in pretty much in all the ways possible. Like, I cry at, like, the story that this wolf was in. I cried so hard when I had to basically, like, leave him for 8 years. And I'm sensitive to weather, to temperature. I'm sensitive. Again, I like ambient music because I'm sensitive to sound. I can't play music for crap, but and of course, me being an artist, I'm trained to look at things visually very intensely. I appreciate the subtlety in this. Like, for example, this looks like, I like how there's kind of like these quote unquote shadows around here, right? Like, it makes these into sort of objects for me and makes me imagine like what these are, what they could be. I don't know. And there's some texture to it. And me having experience as an artist as painting, and I'm not very good at painting. I love doing it, but I'm not good at it. Like, it makes me appreciate the brushstrokes. They're nice. I mean, the way he painted them might seem like kind of trivial. Like, he just painted like this, but to get like paint strokes even and make these values kind of even like this in the way that he does is actually a lot more difficult than you think it would be. Well, yeah, and I don't know, like this last point, I can't explain it. Like eating asparagus, I just like it. I have no specific reason why I like it. I just do, and I think that's great. And I think that's important that people can like things they don't have to give a reason for it. Even though I'm saying like, think about the reasons you like an artwork. You don't have to have a reason. Sometimes you like it just because. And I would say that's true of most things, that people like things just because they like them. And that's perfectly valid. But talking trash on something is a different point, because you're bringing something down, and that's not the same as liking something, Yeah, and this is an important point that the artist like did study painting. He does know how to paint realistically. I think I've seen some of his old artworks, but most of the painters who do the abstract paintings do know how to paint really well, like realistically. It's just that maybe that's just not their thing or whatever. And also, like, he also had connections in the art world. Like, he was a straight white man in New York during the time when this was booming, so he had connections, and he probably had a good business sense on how to like sell and market his work realistically. So, all right, so I think I can get through the rest of this lecture. This is a video about the case for abstraction. Again, we don't have time for it, but the summary of this is painting became more abstract over a longer period of time, especially after photography. So we didn't just come at painting, or abstract painting is just from someone randomly did it. Impressionism, for example, which people recognize and love nowadays, that was considered to be very abstract and weird at the time. And then when we got to the point in around 1839 where photography became a thing, it could represent the world so well now that painters thought, well, these cameras can do it so well and I can't compete with the realism of this. So maybe let's just try doing something else that photography can't do. So some people went to abstraction because, well, I can't compete with photography. There are many reasons to make paintings. Sometimes people just feel like abstraction is the best way to express their idea or their emotion, or translate music into visuals, which I've done. And then another point about this video is abstraction has existed forever. Like, think about old, like ancient pots, pottery, textures, textiles. Like, a lot of them had abstraction, and people think it's beautiful. So, like, why not put it on the canvas, right? There's, of course, differences between art and craft, how everyone perceives them individually, what you think about them. But sometimes, sometimes you want to make abstraction into these big, gigantic, gorgeous pieces, right? Okay. So this is a video about all white paintings, basically, which everyone has seen or heard about at some point. So this video is really interesting. The curator here is kind of um, I don't know. It's very art speaky. I don't necessarily like her tone in it, but she has good points. So the summary of this is people don't get these white paintings. They're just kind of like, why is there an all white painting? I can sort of do this kind of thing. But a lot of these white paintings aren't literally just white paintings. There's subtleties in it where that's hard to see unless you're like a couple inches away from it in a gallery. Okay. An example that's given is if you're trying to paint a room white, think about the different tones in the hardware paint section, that there's whites that are more cream or more eggshell or a little have a tint of green or seafoam or whatever. So sometimes these paintings are just so subtle and they appeal to people who prefer subtlety or who like subtlety or want to explore the realm of subtlety. Again, like I'm one of these people where I like subtlety a lot. So maybe I do want to think about these textures, or maybe these textures are very pleasing to the eye, or maybe it's just nice to have a white painting that has different tones of white that are slightly different, that create like a shift in vision that might look like an optical illusion or something. A lot of these painters, which are minimalist painters, were sort of rejecting the abstract expressionism of painting all over the place, painting all these crazy shapes. It's like, okay, like these really wild paintings are one thing. Let's explore something different and see what happens there. Sometimes these painters are just experimenting around, and people just happen to pick up on it and like it, or they're able to scam people into selling it for $100,000. I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. I'm also thinking about the canvas as an object as opposed to just a flat surface. Maybe artist is trying to bring up textures of the canvas or whatever. Again, that's goes back to subtlety. And this definitely requires more work than a painting of a scene from Greek mythology, for example. It requires more work and investment to really try to connect with the painting. Whereas when things are like a painting of a cow, you just have it right there and you're not necessarily told what to feel, but it's easier to make your mind up about how you feel about it. Because there's some connection to the real world. Whereas these, like, mostly white paintings, you have to sort of come up with everything yourself. So it takes a lot more work. And not everyone's able to do that, or willing to do that, rather. Okay? So another point that this brings up is, why are you insecure about this? Like, why do you feel this way? Why do you hate this painting? And we'll get into that a little bit more. And then this next video is, I could do that. So there's a lot of people who bring up this point of, look at this abstract weird art. I could do it. So this video is very good in saying you actually probably couldn't as easily as you think. Meaning that just because things look like scribbles or they're abstract, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually easy. It might not have skillful rendering of shadows. It may not look like real life, but if you actually try doing it, you could learn a lot from the process. You might think, oh, actually getting these hard straight lines is really difficult. Or maybe I can't get this color to like do this or spread the paint in this way. So actually trying it is probably the best exercise when you say to an artwork, I could do that. And another good thing to do with this is learning, okay, maybe I understand why the artist wanted to do this. And maybe it's just like, maybe the piece itself doesn't look good, or it might look easy, but it was fun to do. Or maybe you might gain an appreciation of the form of how the artist did it. And yeah, again, it could be something, just an experiment maybe it was important back in the day. It opened up doors, it opened up minds to new possibilities that might not make sense to you until you consider the context of it. Okay, so, and photography, for example, that was not considered skillful. It was considered not art because you could just basically it wasn't just pushing a button. There's a process to it with using chemicals and stuff. But it wasn't considered to be skillful. Like, even if you could compose a beautiful photo, a lot of people at the beginning of photography, when photography was around, didn't consider it to be real art. It was just things that captured the world. Like, there's no artistic aspect to it. And what's even funnier is when color photography became a thing in the mid-century, mid-1900s, like, that wasn't considered art. Even after black and white photography was considered art, it was considered kitschy, basically meaning it was cheesy artwork, or it was cheesy and it wasn't real art, until people suddenly grasped, okay, it could be art. Here's what we can do with it. So something about that. Color photography wasn't considered real art after photography had been around for 100 years. It's very bizarre. The way people define things is strange, and you will never understand. I'll never understand humans completely. So yeah, sometimes these paintings are using materials in a different way. There's a lot of research put into it. Maybe there's a huge story behind it. Maybe that's the most important part. So it's not always just the surface that's important. Sometimes it goes beyond that, and you need that. Let me see how much further. Okay, so that I don't know. I think I might not finish this lecture. Okay. All right, so this video is called Art is Pretentious, and all right, so this video is about people calling art pretentious and what that means. So pretentious basically means trying to give greater importance to something that isn't really that important, or trying to make something feel important. And Sarah Ulrich Green, who is married to John Green of Vlogbrothers, Sarah's awesome. This is like the best art history class. If you didn't have to pay, if you weren't able to take school, watch this art assignment channel. Awesome art history class. So this video is about, art is actually kind of pretentious, because as an artist, you're making drawings, you're making paintings, you're turning these pigments, pencil stuff into stuff that you're trying to give meaning to, right? So when you draw something on a piece of paper, it doesn't necessarily have any value. Like, for example, writing a grocery list, you're not going to sell that for $50. But if you make a drawing, you might be able to sell that for $50, and that's the artist. It is kind of pretentious. Hey, technically anyone might be able to do this with some training or even no training, but I'm trying to make it, trying to convince you this is worth $50, right? So in a way, art is pretentious because you are making marks with weird materials, like pigment onto canvas in a specific way, and that's kind of weird. And we have this whole industry and practice of art based around people doing drawings and paintings and sculptures with materials and convincing other people hey, look at this took me a lot of work and effort, and I think it's important, and I think you should look at it. And that's important to bring up, because if you're not an artist, something you need to know is that after you become a teenager, when you're really succumbing to peer pressure and stuff like that, is unless you're you're known as an artist, you probably stop drawing because your art sucks. And why does your art sucks? Because other people won't see it as valuable because it's not rendered realistically. So after that point where you think you're getting judged for your art, it takes a lot of guts to make art, to consider yourself an artist, because you're basically telling people, like, I have enough ego to think that I'm making things other people will find valuable. A good example is myself. I got into grad school because I believe that my artwork is better than the other applicants who could apply. So there was 10 slots at U of O, University of Oregon, available, and I had the ego to think my artwork could beat out 190 people. And I did, because I have the ego. And isn't that kind of pretentious when you think about it? Thinking I'm better than other artists even. Like, of course, I think I'm a better artist than non-artists, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making art at all. But I also felt that I'm better at art than 190 other people. That is super pretentious. That's like the definition of pretentious, right? However, if I didn't have that ego, I wouldn't be here teaching today. And again, I'm a teacher because I feel like I'm smart enough and knowledgeable enough to teach this art to y'all, right? So think about that. Like, artists struggle with this all the time. And there are some artists who love that. But I'm personally very uncomfortable saying I'm better than anyone at anything, even though I know I'm better at making art than 99% of the people on this planet. Because a lot of, like, I say that because only 1% of the planet are actually, like, try to be artists, right? Most people are, like, casuals when it comes to art. Like, I don't mean casuals. I meant, like, they're casually artists. For those older people who don't understand, casuals is a degrading term. Whatever. So, again, I'm basically saying my art is way more, or my position, I'm super knowledgeable, listen to me, I'm smart. So with that, I think I'm going to stop and leave this next section till later when it comes to, like, money. Because essentially what a lot of people don't like about modern art is it costs so much money. Like, people don't give a shit about crappy drawings that are, like, on the street or on their refrigerator. They only really get uppity when it comes to art that sells for a lot of money in galleries that they feel that they can do. And that's a huge point. So I'm sorry for cussing. I don't like cussing, but sometimes I need to cuss in order to get a point across, if that makes sense. So that's it for the lecture today. I'm going to continue this next week. I might get to another topic next week, or it might just only be the rest of this slide. I don't know, but we'll see. All right, so thanks again for watching. If you're in the class, I shouldn't have to thank you. You should be watching anyways. I hope y'all are watching. If you're in my class, if you are watching, please post react with a food emoji, or no, react with a wolf emoji to the video that I post in the Discord channel, so I know that you watch this all the way to the end. If you're not part of this class, thank you. I really appreciate it, and it's really fun. So again, Amicus and I, we're saying goodbye, and we love you. Toodles.